It's on? Hi, everybody. Okay, much better. So my name is Melissa Tomlinson. I'm one of the board members of South Jersey Women for Progressive Change. I'm also the National Executive Director for Badass Teachers Association. I'd like to welcome you to a call to action, fixing New Jersey's broken political system. So this event was brought to you today by a couple groups, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information about each of the groups that are our co-sponsors, and starting with ourselves. South Jersey Women for Progressive Change connects, educates, and empowers women to enact progressive change in our community, state, and nation. We are an intersectional action network that amplifies the voices of our members, including those that are trans and non-binary, engages in political discourse, and actively works to dismantle systems of oppression. We're also very thankful to have on board today New Jersey Working Families Alliance, a grassroots independent political organization fighting for a government that represents the needs and values of working families. The Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, a nonpartisan grassroots group whose mission is to strengthen democracy by working with residents across the state to bring together transparency, accountability, and participation to our state and local governments. And our own local Cherry Hill Progressive Democrats, actively working to increase public participation in democracy and give Cherry Hill voters a real choice. So we have two discussions set up for today, two different panels, and the first panel discussion is entitled The Lay of the Land, How New Jersey Politics is Broken and Why It Matters. Julia Sass-Rubin will be giving us an introduction to New Jersey issues and how these policies affect us. Julia is one of the founders of the Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, and she's also a professor at the Edward Blaustein School of Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers University, something I can aspire to someday. John Wisniewski will be giving us a view from the field and strategy. As a former gubernatorial candidate, New Jersey chairman for Bernie Sanders, and a former deputy speaker of the Assembly, I'm sure he'll give us some valuable insight. And then we have the ballot is political and progressives are organizing. This will be presented by our own board member, Sue Altman, who's also a member of the Good Government Coalition and a Camden resident. And then she's joined by another Camden resident, Luis Gaitan, who will be giving us a Camden resident's perspective on why bad policy matters. Luis is a lifelong resident of Camden, son of a formerly undocumented immigrant from Nicaragua, and he also served in the Navy with a tour in Afghanistan. So if our panel members will make their way to the front.
Okay, can you hear me better? Is that better? Okay, thank you for letting me know. Okay, so just in a nutshell, I think this is what you probably already know, that George Norcross's people controlled the Assembly and the Senate. He controls their campaigns. He funds their campaigns. They don't always all get along, but when it comes down to a vote, they'll all be together. And this is actually a word spoken by this gentleman, Joey DiVincenzo, who is the Essex County executive, who, in conjunction with George Norcross, basically runs the state. And this is him explaining in 2014 why he's jealous of George, because George has seven senators and 12 assembly people. I think the numbers have shifted a little bit. And Joey DiVincenzo only controls 2 senators, or controlled at that time, and 5 assembly people. And in Norcross's own words, this is him speaking, "We have a unified political organization that knows that in order to serve South Jersey, you must function in that manner. There are many times when we have strong differences of opinion on things, but we settle inside of a room and we always come out unified." So how did we get here? Because it wasn't always like this. And if you talk to legislators, they'll say it's never been quite this bad. Well, according to Norcross and Joey DiVincenzo, it began in 2009, right after Christie was elected governor. They sat down and basically worked out an arrangement where the South would have the Senate and the North would have the Assembly. And so Steve Sweeney, Norcross's childhood friend, became the Senate president, which he still is, and Sheila Oliver became the Assembly Speaker. She was previously an Assemblywoman from East Orange, and of course now she's Lieutenant Governor. And in DiVincenzo's own words, I called George, and that's how we put it all together. We got 2 votes for him, for Senator Sweeney, and he delivered our votes with the Assembly people, and we were able to get the majority, and Oliver became the Speaker. It was very, very convenient. So it worked out very well during the Christie administration. They had a very good working relationship. This is still from Ryan Liz's article. Norcross enjoyed benefit after benefit during the Christie administration, playing a crucial role in every legislative victory the Christie had, while seeing his own priorities signed into law by the governor. So there's a long list of things that were signed into law under Christie that benefited Mr. Norcross. He restructured the state's higher education institutions. Obviously, Rowan University benefited tremendously. The emergency medical services went to Cooper Hospital, whose board he chairs. I'm guessing you guys know a bit of this already, right? I'll get to some newer stuff. And this is, I think, a particularly interesting one, which is this, I love this little laser thing. Okay, so the New Jersey's corporate incentive programs were overhauled with a heavy emphasis on benefiting South Jersey and Camden in particular, and miraculously 86 million of those tax credits went to George Norcross's own insurance firm. Just an accident. And George is very adroit at using the system, so sometimes it doesn't work out in a particular political coalition, and he manages to move along and find new partners. For example, he also doesn't bode anyone who resists very well. So, for example, although Sheila Oliver was the Speaker, she didn't always toe the line. And when she started to disagree too much, he switched out. He made a deal with different political bosses in the North. And when Vinnie Prieto became the Speaker. And then when Vinnie started to talk back too much and not to do what he was told, they switched out once more. But it was a little more complicated because in 2016, the plan was that Steve Sweeney was going to become governor, and then they would control the governorship and the Assembly and the Senate. But that's not exactly how it worked out. When Jersey City Mayor Fulop dropped out of the race, all the northern county bosses got together, and they did not want Norcross to have that kind of power. So they jumped from Fulop to supporting Phil Murphy, and Sweeney was forced out of the race because he didn't have their support. He didn't have the line, which Sue's going to talk about in a little while. Fortunately, Norcross had Plan B, which is he made a deal with the Middlesex machine and municipal political organization, and Middlesex Assemblyman Craig Coughlin became the Assembly Speaker in exchange for votes from the Middlesex delegation for keeping Senator Sweeney in the Senate presidency. Right? So that's how we got to this. So what does it mean to control the legislature? It means quite a bit. So the Senate president and the Assembly Speaker have complete control over who serves on the committees, over who chairs and vice chairs the various legislative committees, and that brings many perks to those individuals. If you're the chair or the vice chair, you get money for staff. You also get to decide what legislation moves or gets heard in your committee, and you tend to generate more campaign contributions when you're a chair or a vice chair because there are people who want to get their business in front of your committee. The Speaker and the Senate President get to decide what legislation ultimately gets voted out of committee, even though the chair has a lot of influence. And most importantly, they get to decide what legislation gets voted on by the full Assembly and the full Senate. So basically, they control the entire legislative agenda. And you're seeing that play out now with Governor Murphy, obviously, and their unwillingness to work with him on a lot of issues. So if you look at the leadership on the just New Jersey State website, on the legislative website, you'll see that this is the Senate leadership, that there's a recurrence of certain counties. That's not to say that every one of these individuals is a bad person or in any way always going to vote the line, but there is a preponderance of those three delegations, Middlesex, South Jersey, and Essex, that tends to show up. So this is the Senate, and every person on here is a loyal soldier, even if they're not from one of those counties. You'll notice that they tend to vote with the leadership. Same thing in the Assembly, a lot of Middlesex, a lot of South Jersey, a little bit of Essex. Again, many of these are really wonderful legislators. Just because they're part of, say, the Middlesex delegation doesn't mean that they're in any way dishonest or bad people, and many of them are quite progressive. It's just that because they're in Middlesex, they'll get elevated and get better placement. Sometimes it's incredibly blatant. So this is Senator Teresa Ruiz, who is the senator from the 29th District, and she is also, you can't really read it from there, but she's also the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Essex County Executive. That would be that Joey DiVincenzo that we started with. And she is the Senate President Pro Temp. She is the chair of the Senate Education Committee, which is a very powerful position, and she is on the Budget Committee. This is Assemblywoman Ileana Pinter-Marin, who is also from the 29th District. And look, she also works for Joey DiVincenzo in her day job. And she chairs the Joint Budget Oversight Committee and co-chairs the New Jersey Legislative Select Oversight and Appropriations Committees. Very powerful committees. So it's not subtle. Like, they work for one political boss and then they benefit from it in the legislature. The leadership has tremendous power not only to appoint the committees, they also have tremendous power to reward and punish legislators. I hope I'm not giving you PTSD here. Been there, done that. I know. And lived, thankfully. So a couple of examples. Senator Nia Gill, who tends to be quite independent, and she used to be considered part, I think, of Joey DiVincenzo's delegation, but she tends to do what she thinks is right for her folks in the 34th District, which is Montclair. And as a result, she lost the chairmanship of the Commerce Committee after 10 years. She was replaced as the Senate Pro Temp by Teresa Ruiz, who we just saw a minute ago. And most recently, just 2 months ago, she was removed by Sweeney from both the Judiciary and the Budget Committee. She was actually the vice chair of Judiciary, and she was removed entirely from both committees. So she was just sent off to Siberia, in effect, for not doing what she was told. Another example, not quite as extreme. So Brian Stack, who often has aligned himself with the machine, he happened to disagree on the legislative gerrymandering, which I know you'll hear about some more later today. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it already. So he was taken off of Budget and Judiciary. So that was enough of a transgression to lose those two very powerful positions. So how do they use their power, right? One way that they use their power is basically to distort the legislative process. And the Camden folks, this might look a little familiar. So this is from 2014. This is the Urban Hope legislation when it was being amended. Urban Hope is the legislation that affects only Camden that created the Renaissance charter schools. And the initial legislation was not quite the way that it was being implemented on the ground. And so the way that that was remedied was legislation retroactively to fix what they were doing, which was kind of illegal. But the way the legislation happened was a week before the legislative session was over, at 11 o'clock at night, they dropped this bill in the Senate and Assembly Budget Committee, and nobody had seen the bill. And in fact, there was an article that quoted one of the Republican senators who said, we didn't have the bills in advance, so they were being asked to vote on right then. I didn't know what the hell the bills were. So this is not atypical. It came out of the committees. Of course, those committees are stacked with allies, so everything comes through the committees. And it was passed by the full Senate and Assembly right after. This is just one of many examples. It was just a particularly egregious one that got covered by the press. So this distortion of the legislative process is one of the ways that they use their power. Another way they use their power is by controlling powerful committees and boards. You may already be aware of this fact that Governor Murphy can't get his nominees through. And those include judicial nominees, includes various authorities and boards. The State Board of Education, a very powerful body that decides a lot of policies related to our schools. Right before the governor took over, Senator Sweeney worked with Governor Christie to stack all those committees, all the judiciary openings, all the boards, and he put 5 or 6 new people on the State Board of Education who align with Governor Christie's idea about education, but do not align with Governor Murphy, and now Murphy cannot replace them because they won't move his nominations. So controlling this board's a very powerful role. Generating resources for themselves and their allies. I'm guessing you're probably familiar with the Economic Opportunity Act. We talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of the tax credits. So in 2013, the legislature passed the Economic Opportunity Act, which greatly expanded New Jersey's tax break program for businesses, particularly a lot of sweeteners in parentheses for Camden. In 2014, the Economic Development Authority approved a $260 million tax break, one of the largest ever, for Holtec International, which just happens to be a company that is owned by a friend of George Norcross, and Norcross sits on their board. A coincidence. And as I mentioned earlier, another one of these tax credits went to George Norcross's firm, $86 million, to allow them to move to Camden from a town nearby. In January, the comptroller released a report on this particular tax credit program, which, by the way, $11 billion has been approved for tax credits so far. And what they found was that the Economic Development Authority had not properly determined whether businesses had, in fact, created or retained jobs, which was ostensibly the reason for the program. And they did not evaluate whether programs generated any economic benefits for the state. So that's a lot of money with really unknown impact. Now, we could have a whole discussion about whether even when it ostensibly does generate jobs, $80,000 per job is a good investment, but that's another conversation. As Sheila Reinterson of the New Jersey Policy Perspectives put it, every New Jersey taxpayer should be furious that the state has handed out billions of dollars in corporate tax breaks with no strings attached when our schools are underfunded, our roads are falling apart. There's a lot of other needs in the state. Just want to give you one more example. You might be familiar with this one as well, with PSC&G. So 4 months after securing a $300 million annual subsidy to support its nuclear operations, PSC&G gave a $55,000 donation to a super PAC called General Majority, which is affiliated with George Norcross. And surprisingly, General Majority spent heavily to support the re-election campaign of Senate President Steve Sweeney, who just happened to be the primary sponsor of the legislation that benefited PSC&G. Another coincidence. And last but not least, they use their power to do special favors for allies. So you may know former Camden Mayor, I'm sorry, I'm giving you guys PTSD, I know. Former Camden Mayor Dana Red, who spent most of her career at about $100,000 paying into a pension system. When she became mayor of Camden, she had to drop out of that system. So Senator Sweeney passed legislation basically specifically for her to get her back into the pension system. And then coincidentally, she got a $275,000 a year job on an obscure board that did not do a job search, that just specifically hired her, which set her up for a 6-figure pension that was substantially more than she ever made, let alone what she paid into the pension system. What's that? There you go. And as Matt Friedman of Politico, who's an excellent journalist, if you're not reading him already, you should be, pointed out, this was all happening as Sweeney has been touring the state, talking about the second round of pension and health care reforms that he wants to inflict on public sector employees. So as Friedman pointed out, it's an outlandish example of our state's political machines using the system for their friends while ensuring that the little people must sacrifice, insisting that the little people must sacrifice. So the other example I just want to share with you is one you're also probably going to be familiar with. Oh, that print is really small for some reason. So Don Norcross, Congressman Don Norcross, before he became a congressman, was elected to this assembly in 2009. A week after he became an assembly member, Senator Dana Red, these names are consistent, right? You're hearing the same names over and over, was elected mayor of Camden. So she stepped down from the Senate, became mayor of Camden, and South Jersey Democratic County Committee members unanimously selected Donna Norcross to fill her seat in the state Senate. As an incumbent, he won a special election in 2010 and then was reelected in 2011. And then in 2013, Congressman Rob Andrews stepped down. And on the same day that he stepped down, this is amazingly impressive coordination, virtually every major New Jersey Democratic power player endorsed Norcross for Congress, and he became a congressman. So just to sum it up, what enables the machines to maintain this level of power? Well, a whole bunch of stuff, and you're going to hear more details, so I'm not going to go into the ballot line or the county committee structure, because I'm guessing that these guys are going to talk about that a little bit. But you have leadership PACs, which are able to finance candidates and give them a huge competitive advantage. You have largely non-competitive legislative districts in the state. So as long as you get the line and you're the candidate for the Democratic Party, you're probably going to win. You have no initiative and referendum process. Initiative and referendum has its limitations, but basically what it means is the legislature controls everything. There's no end run around them. You can't do a petition and get a certain percentage of the population to sign it, like, say, in California, and get something on the ballot. We're stuck. This is what we have to work with. There are interlocking political positions. The example I gave you earlier about Senator Ruiz, you can be Joey DiVincenzo's staff member and be in the legislature. You have no statewide public advocate or any role that basically cuts across whose responsibility it is to look out for the people of the state. Right? The governor, presumably, right? But there's nobody outside of that structure. And we have very good media, but we don't have a centralized media because we have two major markets, and so people don't read the same thing, and there's no really dominant newspaper. So a lot of this, everything I presented is basically quotes from really good journalists' stories, but nobody's reading across the board these various venues. And I am being told to stop, but I'm also done, so I'm going to stop. Thank you.
I am not sure how I can follow that. So after hearing all of that, how many of you are getting ready to move? So the thing that you need to understand about what you just heard is the system that exists, each piece of it was put together as a reform. I mean, we talked about leadership PACs. There was a fellow who was a professor at Rutgers University, Dr. Alan Rosenthal, and he had come up with the idea of leadership PACs as a way of reforming the political system. And obviously at the time he thought this was going to work, but what we've seen is this fundamental unfairness. Right? If you want to give to anybody up here running for, say, an assembly seat or a council seat, you can give them $2,600. If any one of them up here was a county chair, you can give them $37,500. And so obviously there's an imbalance there, and most of the money now runs to these leadership PACs, which makes it very hard for any individual, whether you're on the line, off the line, part of the organization, not part of the organization. Most of the money flows to the leadership PACs. But I digress. First, I spent 22 years in elected office. I started out as a candidate for the General Assembly in 1993. I lost that election by 400 votes. And so I'm reminded every election that when people say every vote counts, that it does. Because in my case, there were 360 election districts, and I lost by 400 votes. So that's like 1 1/8 vote per district. And when you lose by that small a margin, you start thinking about all of the things that you didn't get to in that election and all of the people you missed. You change 200 people's minds and you get elected. One of the issues that, I mean, the things you talked about are issues that need to be fixed. But how do you fix them? You fix them with votes. And one of the things that we all struggle with are those votes. In the 2018 primary election, one of the most pivotal primaries in recent memory because everybody was reacting to the presidency of Donald Trump. People were energized, and we saw the results in November. We have an 11-1 congressional delegation. But what's mystifying is in the midst of that turmoil, in the midst of people being upset about who their president was and the things that were being said and the opportunity for change, only 13% of the people eligible to vote turned out in the primary. 13%. And so when you're talking about making change and you understand that that change has to happen at the beginning of the process, not the end, when you see so few people turn out, you understand that that's where the opportunity exists. Now, we get misled by ourselves. Everybody in this room, by definition, is not a normal person. I mean that in the best sense. Because unlike most of the people you see out on Kings Highway who are either going to the supermarket or maybe going out for dinner, they're not thinking about the things you're thinking about. They're just engaged in everyday life. They either have to take the kids to the doctors or maybe somebody to piano lessons or soccer, and the list goes on. They're just doing what they need to do to make their lives full in their sense. We think about the policy and the politics, and so sometimes we can lull ourselves into this belief that people know and understand the things that we know and understand. I'll give you an example, true story. So when I ran in 1993, and I came so close, I ran again in 1995. So I was out doing the same exact thing that I did in 93. I was in my hometown of Sayreville going door to door, and I stopped at a home, and I remember it was around dinner time. It was 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and I knocked on the door, and the woman came to the door, and I started, the usual door-to-door spiel. If any of you run, you know it, right? You see the person coming, so you get a little nervous, you take a deep breath, and out comes the speech. Hi, I'm John Wisniewski. I'm running for General Assembly. And before I could finish even that sentence, she had a dish towel in her hand, and she snapped it at me, and she said, "Don't give me that, young man." And I was at the top of the steps, and I was almost like falling backwards. And I said, but she, no. She said, "You were here 2 years ago. You made a lot of promises. You said you were going to do things, and I haven't heard from you. You haven't done anything." And then she put her hands on her hips in this self-satisfied way, and she said, "So what do you have to say about that?" And I said, "Well, I lost that election." It's a true story. And she said, "Oh, you did? Well, I'll vote for you." And so we believe that people believe what we believe and understand what we have to educate people. We have to explain to them. And it's not about telling them what's wrong with somebody else and what's wrong with some system. You have to tell them about what you will do and what you believe and how you're going to make it better, because that's what people respond to. And so I had the opportunity over those 22 years to engage with people and talk about what I would do. And it gave me the opportunity to run for governor in 2017. And for those of you who still have the whiz stickers under your sweaters, thank you very much. I appreciate that. But one of the things I learned, and this is to the point that I think a lot of people are talking about, if you want to run, there are lots of hurdles. There are institutional hurdles. The organization, when I was running for governor, decided that they were going to galvanize behind a candidate, and that candidate happened to have a lot of money. And once that happens, it's an uphill struggle. Now, we raised $2.2 million. We got 22% of the vote in a primary election for governor. We won one county, Salem County, and we were the most efficient candidate because $2.2 million for 22% of the vote. The winner of the race got 44% for $22 million. So I was the most cost-effective candidate, but I realized too late that that's not how they judge winners. You have to actually have the most votes. But what it shows is that if you're willing to fight the fight, you can get people engaged. But you have to understand that you're not always going to be successful at first. They are going to make it hard for you to be successful. But the only way that this movement succeeds is if you keep at it and you build and you engage the people that live right next door to you, that you believe know exactly what you're doing and why, and they don't have a clue. That's what this has to be about, educating people about what makes you different, what makes the issues you support important, and how you're going to help them. And I wanted to be here today because I think that message often gets lost. It is about the problems we face, but it's more about how are we going to solve those problems? Who are the candidates that are going to fix those problems? And how do we tell people about those candidates? There's a lot of people who believe in this as being live streamed on Facebook. And it's a wonderful tool. You can advertise very cheaply. You can reach a lot of people very easily. But we shouldn't kid ourselves into believing that that's the solution. Because the only way you really get to people is when you talk to them face to face. When I first ran for the Assembly in 1993, everybody in my district said, you know, the bosses have decided that it's not your turn. People invited me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to put their hand on my shoulder and say, you're a great guy, John, but, you know, it's not your turn. You need to wait. There'll be another time for you. But I did something that they weren't thinking about. In the 19th District when I ran, there were 360 committee men and women, and they made the decision in a voting machine with a secret ballot. I went door to 360 households and sat in the living rooms of 360 committee people. And many of them, I found, didn't really know what was going on, didn't really appreciate the process, didn't really understand the choices. And if I hadn't done that, there's somebody that would have said, well, here's what we're doing. Here's what the team's going to do, and we'd love it if you came along. But if you get out and you talk to people, and it's a lot of work. I mean, I did this in a day before GPS and MapQuest and all these things. I had big Hagstrom maps with strings and lines and everything on it, and you know, you had to find your way around the neighborhood. But when you're in somebody's living room, when you're at the doorstep, and you're talking to them about what's important to you, how you're going to make their life different, how you're going to help lift people up. And we've got no end of issues. I mean, we could talk about the pension crisis in New Jersey. We could talk about health care. We can talk about transportation. Anybody love New Jersey Transit? No, I didn't think so. These are issues that need to be fixed, but they need people to fix it. They need advocates to stand up for it. And that's what we all can be. Whether you're advocating for yourself as a candidate, whether you're advocating for your best friend who's a candidate, whether you're advocating for single-payer health care, it is a person-to-person business. There is no substitute for that. And I wanted to be here today to tell you that I'm willing to be part of that with you, to help out, because we need to make change in New Jersey. All the reforms that we have that were supposed to be improvements, all didn't work. But we can still make those changes. When we think about the only 13% turning out in 2018, and what a different world it would be if 23%, just 10% more showed up, what a different world we could make. It's up to all of us. Let's do it together, and I look forward to being there with you. Thank you very much.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. I know it's a Saturday afternoon, and talking about politics on a Saturday is a heavy lift. But we here in South Jersey really are in the belly of the beast. Oh, it's my clicker. Thank you. We really are in the belly of the beast. And so much of New Jersey's liberation will come if we can organize and we can get our acts together. And so everybody who came from all far-flung regions of South Jersey here today, thank you, because this is one of many steps we will take together to clean up all of New Jersey. And today, I'm going to talk about the ballot, which sounds like a wonky thing, and it sounds boring, and it sounds very technical. But those of you who've run or have been in close proximity to those people who have run know that in New Jersey specifically, the ballot is super, super important. And I'm going to walk through why, and then we're going to turn our attention toward what progressives can do. So how other states do it. So this ballot right here, this is California, and it is a hot mess. This is an open primary, so they have a lot of candidates. This is a senator election. They have a gazillion candidates running. That's one end of the spectrum. This is Nebraska. Now, what you'll notice in Nebraska is that they run a ballot the way you or I would if we were a principal in a high school and we were in charge of running the student council election, right? All of the candidates who are running for a position would be together in the same box, and so that when you, as a high school senior, go to place your vote, you look at the position, you say, okay, class secretary, who do I want? Okay, I want Sally. I'll put my name, I'll check her box and put it right into the box, and at the end of the day, everyone will count the votes. That's the obvious way to design a ballot. That's the most efficient way. That's the most fair way. That's the way it should be done. That's how they do it in Wyoming. New York is a little trickier. New York is closest to New Jersey as we get, but even then, they don't use the same visual tricks as we do in New Jersey. So what we have in New Jersey is the party line. And you heard a couple of my colleagues reference it. What it means is this. The Democratic Party, the county party, gets a line. And so when you go to vote, you look at the ballot, and there's usually only one line that's completely full. And so you can just hit the button that says, vote for those people, all the way down the line. And they're actually the only ones on the line who can call themselves Democrats. So you noticed in New York, both of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders were Democratic candidates. In New Jersey, actually, the Democratic Party, Inc. is the only one who can call themselves Democrats. Everybody else in the primary, we're talking about the primary. Everyone else in the primary has to come up with another name. So it's Progressive Democrats, or it's maybe Democrats Against Trump, or Democrats for Change, or Democrats for the People, or whatever. But no one else can be Democrats. So that's craziness. So all of these people are the vetted candidates. They get on the line. You might find that you want a candidate way out here. And what we in the nerdy ballot New Jersey politics scene call that is ballot Siberia. And I had a conversation with a world-renowned pollster, which I thought was fabulous, the other day. It was very exciting for me. And I said, hey, world-renowned pollster, how many points do you think the ballot line is worth in New Jersey? Because I had been going around the state saying 30, because that was like kind of my back-of-the-envelope guesstimate. He said at least 45. That's crazy. It's like starting a basketball game or a football game down like 10 touchdowns, or a basketball game down 40 points. You would never enter a race with those kinds of odds. And that's the ultimate stick, and it's the ultimate carrot for party bosses to control how things work. Does it make a difference? Yes. And Wisniewski mentioned that he won Salem County. Well, guess what? In New Jersey, there's only 2 counties that don't have the line, and one of them is Salem County. And Wisniewski, who marketed himself as a progressive candidate, won in Salem County. Salem County is not what we would call in South Jersey a progressive state, a progressive county, right? Like of all the counties you'd think where a progressive insurgent could win with underfunding and all that, you wouldn't think Salem County. But Wisniewski, without the line interfering with democracy, Wisniewski was able to win in Salem County. And that is a real lesson and an underscoring of what that world-famous pollster told me about the line's value. So Sussex and Salem are the 2 counties in New Jersey. What do they have in common? Both really rural, right? Both not a lot of people. So it's not worth that many votes. So when it comes down to the chess game of who's what, Essex County's worth a lot of points, all of South Jersey together is worth a lot of points. Little old Sussex, little old Salem, not worth that many points. Not that many people live there. Not that many Democrats live there. It's also, they tend to be Republican controlled. So there's less control by the Democratic Party as a state for what happens on the ballot. And in every county, the county clerk is the one who has the say for how the ballot looks. And guess what? The county clerk's also an elected position. So they actually have an invested interest in keeping things the way they are because their job depends on getting elected. It's bananas. All right, so you don't just simply grab a clipboard and run for office in New Jersey. It's not like that. We love it. That was Barack Obama. Such an idealist. Not how it works in New Jersey. So we have this thing called a committee process. And this is actually the Democratic ballot in 2017 or 2018. This is insane. This is the ballot, okay? This is where you can't see who's here. This is Menendez. This is his line. These are all the people running in Camden County. Then way out here is Nina Scarpa. Does anyone know Nina from Merchantville? Yes, people in the back. I know. We had a lot of Nina fans in the room. Nina won in ballot Siberia by 2 votes in Merchantville. which is crazy and awesome and super empowering and exciting, and like, go Nina. She was the only woman in that whole town council. So she ran, she's like, we should probably have a woman on town council. And they were like, not your turn, not your turn. And she's like, well, I'm going to run off the line. Ran off the line, won by 2 votes. Awesome. But you'll notice there's a gazillion freeholder candidates in between Jeff Nash and over column 9 in ballot Siberia. These people are put here to make the ballot even bigger. So they realize that if you only had 2 columns, right, if you put everybody who was running back in 2 columns, it would create a visual that looks more like that New York ballot, right, where you're like, oh, I could see choosing among all these different lines. What they do in Camden County is they put people, these people don't have websites. You could Google this. They're not actually running. They got like between 0.5 and 1.5% of the overall vote. They're just kind of in there. They're not actually running a competitive race. They're there as placeholders to make the line really long so that anyone like Nina Scarpa is way out in ballot Siberia. Okay, that's just close up in case you didn't believe me. And you'll see that the line has an effect, right? The line, those guys won by a lot, right? They might be beloved freeholders, okay? But they also have the line, and it has a huge effect. You'll notice also that if we went back to that slide, the line has a bit of a halo effect. So the people next in line and closest out tend to get the next number of votes. So it's like, it's a real powerful thing. The New York Times, national media really helps in New Jersey, because when someone from not New Jersey looks at how New Jersey works, people are like, wait, what happened? That's nuts. So anytime the New York Times or WNYC or you name it, national media, Washington Post, writes about New Jersey, it really helps the progressive cause. Counties all have their own rules about who gets the line. So this is a really important thing. It's not consistent across all different counties, making progressive networking and progressive activism extra tricky, because you can't just call up your friend in Middlesex County and say, hey, how'd you guys do it? Because the laws and the bylaws are all different. This is really important. I think this visual says a lot. These are the 7 South County, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only did 5. I couldn't do it after a while. This is the South Jersey County chairmen. Okay, you'll notice they have some features in common. They're all men. They're all white men. They're all roughly the same age range. These guys decide who gets the line. And they sometimes have votes, but in South Jersey we have no place that has a secret vote. So everyone from all the different municipalities will come together, and they may or may not do this. They don't do this everywhere. They don't publicize it. They don't let you know ahead of time. They may vote, but it's almost always a voice vote. And the thing about a voice vote is, if you want to stick your neck out and you want to say, no, I'm voting for Nina Scarpa, I want her on the line, then everyone in the room will know that you're the one who wanted someone that the rest of us didn't want. So it is another lever of control. So the point of this slide, this one I just could not resist. So over Super Bowl weekend, South Jersey women had a meeting. It was lovely. We had a very nice time. We talked about racial justice. Meanwhile, in Puerto Rico, 60 men, all from New Jersey, all politically active men, went down with Joey D., all 3 Norcross brothers, some guy from the EDA, mayors of this town, county chairman from that town, all got together to hang out in Puerto Rico. And look, I get it. Boys will be boys. They're going to go to Puerto Rico. They're going to watch the Super Bowl. Fine. But this good old boys club is who runs our state. And to think that 100% of the people on this trip are all politically active, they're all politically connected. I mean, one of them's on the EDA board that approved the tax credits that went to George's company. I mean, that's insane. The bill that Don wrote. I mean, this is just good old boys club. So you combine that with the fact that all of the county, almost all of the county chairs, certainly in South Jersey, are white men. And there's this really sort of macho bro culture. That's not good government, and that needs to change. So being on the line gets you a lot of advantages. We've kind of talked about this a little bit. Vote by mail, I think, is a good thing because it increases voter turnout. Some people are nervous about vote by mail because it makes party line voting more common, but that's something we have to deal with because voting is better than not voting. If you get on the line, and if you fight against the line, you'll notice that the county committees will start to trot out the big names. And so one of the things the county committees have is access to celebrities. So Alec Baldwin appeared at a South Jersey fundraiser when they needed to raise some money. Bloomberg, back when he was flirting with a presidential run, he came down to South Jersey. And this is probably one of my favorites. Cory Booker, our presidential candidate, who, good enough guy, right? He, for whatever reason, felt it really necessary to come up from Washington, where he's a senator, in 2017 and endorse Cherry Hills Town Council. That's crazy. How many there's like 600 towns in New Jersey, and Cory Booker, because there was a challenger that year, Cory Booker took time out of his day to do a video. This is you could actually go online and watch it. I see it's only had 108 views, which I kind of find amusing. But you can actually go watch the video Cory Booker did with the Cherry Hill progressives, or Cherry Hill incumbents. So if you are an activist, I'm supposed to stop. Okay. The last thing I'm going to say is, where you find yourself in this ecosystem, whether you're an activist, whether you're an insider, whether you're someone who works for the county or you work for something like Connor Strong and Buckley, or you work for Cooper Hospital, you find yourself in this ecosystem whether you like it or not. And there are difficult decisions. And I don't hate any player, but I do hate the game. And it's up to all of us to take a little bit of risk. And it's hard. And if it's the difference between putting food on your table and not, and the difference between having a professional life and not, those challenges and those choices are real. But real change requires sacrifice, and it requires sacrifice from all of us who know the truth and all of us who know what's really going on in South Jersey. Social media is a weapon. We can use it. They have a terrible social media game. Organizing and engagement, those expertises are weapons that we can use, because this whole system is designed on people not being engaged. So all the efforts we've done to engage people in all the various groups in this room, fight the machine. So I will leave you with that, and thank you very much.
How does this work? I got to follow that up. Oh, geez. All right. I'm Luis Gaitan. I'm a lifelong Camden resident, except for that time I went to college and got lost on a trip to Afghanistan. Yeah. I'm trying to think which one is the...
If you want to go forward, it's that button. Okay.
All right. There we go. So here's Camden, 10 square miles. This was a quick and dirty PowerPoint presentation, so don't mind that part. Thank you, Sue. Sure time. But I just wanted to cover, I'm an engineer by trade. I design highways and bridges, so please don't worry about driving on 95. Camden by the numbers. I really wanted to get into some of the numbers that don't agree with some of the, I guess, Florio report that came out after the Phil Murphy scathing review. And it kind of shows a stark difference between the population that's coming into Camden and the population that's been there their whole lives and even generations. So getting into it, 74,000 people currently live in the city of Camden. That's close to an all-time low. This city in its heyday used to have the 120,000 people that are currently working with, or when the city's in full capacity, it actually holds up to 120,000 people. In terms of poverty rate and unemployment, we're seeing almost like a threefold difference. Poverty rate in Camden is 3 times the state average. The unemployment rate is also almost 3 times the state average. And then when you look at the average household income, that's almost a threefold difference. And these are 2018 numbers. Let's think about how long this tax incentive program has been in effect. Let's think about how many times have we been told Camden's rising. And we look at these stark differences in the two populations operating in this city. So, some additional numbers I also have. Camden just got its, I guess they did an average of the credit score in Camden, and that's actually in the top 10 worst in the country in terms of credit score for a city. That's not helpful in terms of getting families into long-term housing. That's not helpful into building wealth. We're talking about one medical mistake or accident, and that cripples a family possibly for a generation. Not to mention our housing stock is getting lower and lower by accidental fires, which are unfortunately common in our community. And we're seeing no kind of a filling of that gap with this Camden Rising initiative to kind of fill that need for low-income, affordable housing. And one thing I do want to mention with this all-time low population, Not that the Hoboken and Camden City, I guess, they're both very similar cities in terms of geography. But Hoboken is right across the water from one of the greatest metropolitan areas in our country, just like Camden is across from Philadelphia. Hoboken did see its own population dip right before it kind of went into this massive extreme gentrification swing that now has an average household cost of $600,000. That's not something that's realistic for our 74,000 people. It's not something realistic in terms of how we address this generational wealth gap that's going on in the city. So, back into my hometown. All right. These tax incentive programs, this playground of incentives are all located on the waterfront. This, as we can all see, and does anyone remember the Holtec situation and how ugly that was? And how I guess, that kind of showed the ugly colors of what the leaders at the top think of the Camden residents and what kind of hope they had in terms of where our residents can go. Campbell's Field, does anyone know where that is now? Demolished to the ground. That's kind of an example of some of the risk we're taking with taxpayer money. And it doesn't really show, there haven't been any, I guess, or accountability issues that I mentioned in my op-ed. This has just continued to be a playground on the waterfront while our surrounding neighborhoods are seeing no extreme or tangible benefits to the ground. So a tale of two cities. As much as they don't want to hear it, Camden Rising does appear to be, at first glance, a tale of two cities. Me, as a lifelong Camden resident, I can't say I'm seeing any tangible benefits in my own neighborhood. I grew up in East Camden, outside of the Green area. And one of the major, I guess, statistics that drives me crazy is our downtown is actually not the heaviest foot traffic part of our town. Our highest concentration of small businesses are each of these 6 green lines. They have the highest density of small business, Camden-owned businesses. They hire Camden residents at a rate higher than 75%. Which one of these companies can say that? Which one of these companies can claim that high of a number? That's what drives me crazy, and I want to bring back the small business and entrepreneurship market into our city. That's a question. Yep. Questions at the end. All right.
Yeah, so are there any questions? We'll go quickly because I think we want to leave time for mingling and productive accidents at the end. So anybody have any questions based on, John had to leave, but anyone else? Do you want to ask any questions of anyone here? Yes, go ahead.
You talked about the ballot. Please speak into the mic because even though we can hear you, the live stream cannot. Thank you.
You talked about the ballot being wrong. We have to get county clerk people in place to make that change?
So there's a couple different ways you can do it. So county clerks are statutorily who has the jurisdiction over the ballot in New Jersey. So the way I see the pathway happening is probably a few different things. First, I think there needs to be pressure put on sitting politicians to speak out against the structures that are unfair. So we need to make this an issue that people understand when we're talking about the line, that it's a vernacular that people in the state understand. So put pressure on them there. As far as technically is concerned, yes, in the New Jersey statute, the county clerk is the one who designs the ballot. So we have to get county clerk people running, and we have to win those elections, and then have those people be strong enough to withstand the pressure on them, willing to lose their job strong, to withstand the pressure on them to make that change, and then keep it that way after that. So it's a tough uphill battle, but I do think we can get there if we make it an issue across the state, and there are networks of people working on that. So we hope you'll join us. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, that person has the mic, yeah.
group that I'm involved with is meeting with our county clerk. What would you suggest how should I approach her to not turn her off totally, but also to put some pressure on?
That's an awesome question. Can everyone hear me? I think I have to push it up. So I think that what you can do is all the normal things we do in a campaign. So write op-eds, get your friends to write op-eds. Come with a petition. Come with sample ballots from other states. Ask for accountability and ask why ours is different. And then get some elected officials locally to stand up and say, I support this measure. And that would just be the beginning. And work with other of us in the state to organize sort of a campaign across the state so one county clerk isn't sticking their neck out on their own. Yeah, Sarah.
This is kind of a follow-up question to that. Is that true for the Board of Education as well? Because I'm thinking school board members might be allies.
So school board members are great allies, and they are not partisan elections in New Jersey. So, yes. So if you were to put it in terms New Jerseyans can understand, a ballot that looks like a school board election is a much more fair ballot, even though we still know that the luck of the draw, whoever gets that top line in that ballot is likely to win or has an advantage. That type of ballot is what we're looking for. So 100%. Great point. We'll take one or two more. Yeah. Nico.
Personally, I think that one of the most powerful things that we as citizens can have but do not have in New Jersey is the ability to petition the government to put something on the ballot. And that's something that I think that as citizens we should always be fighting for with our government, because we have to fight with our government. We're New Jersey. But my question on this subject is that something, and if you know off the top of your head, is that something that can be done legislatively, or is that something that requires a constitutional amendment for New Jersey's constitution?
Right. So both, because the only way to get a constitutional amendment for New Jersey, it seems like you know that, is for the legislature to put it on the ballot, and then we get to vote on it. So there's no process that does not require going through the legislature. Initiative and referendum have many limitations. I'm not suggesting that they're, a great solution. It's just that we're like in a closed circle. Like there's no way out, right? So something has to break through that. And that a limited referendum process that can only be used for, say, good government issues might be something to consider, but you first have to get the legislature to put it on the ballot, and then you're like in this loop, right? Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
Hello, my name is AJ. I'm an activist in New Jersey, and I fight for campaign finance. Thank you very much. And I do know that there's a couple of campaign finance bills going through. There was one that just went through the Senate, now it's in the Assembly. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I think you want this one, Julia, don't you?
So my understanding, the last thing I saw was that Coughlin said he was going to draft a different bill than the one. So Andrew Zwicker has a bill in the Assembly that he has not been able to move. And I think yesterday, I don't know if anyone else saw this, that the Speaker said that he's not going to move that bill. He has some issues with it. He's going to introduce a different bill. And I don't know if that's just a way of killing it or if that's a genuine effort to address. I know there were some good government groups that had concerns with the dark money, like the League actually had some concerns with that legislation that were perfectly legitimate. But I just don't know whether this is a legitimate ploy or if this is an effort to just kill it. So I think we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. I think they're trying to do nothing until the election. In general, I think they're trying to do nothing until the election. So.
Great. Yeah. Yep. Let's get Melissa back up here.
Okay, we're going to get ready for our next panel. Can everybody give a round of applause to our panel up here? First round, it was great. Okay, so as depressing as that may have seemed, right, we're facing a big challenge coming forward from here. But now that we're becoming educated about all this stuff, we know that we can move forward from here. But there has been victories and wins along the way, and that's what the next panel is going to speak a little bit about. Organizing wins, there is hope. Our first speaker, this will all be started out by an amazing woman that I've had the honor to work with for the past couple years, Ransha Dickerson. Rancha is the national organizer from Journey for Justice Alliance, which is a grassroots community of youth and parent-led organizations in 30 cities. She's the education and artistic director of Unity Camden Center of South Jersey Incorporated and co-founder of Camden Parents Union. In her spare time, she's a birthing doula to expectant mothers, mother of 6 children herself, and a wife to her high school sweetheart, Jamal. After Rancha, we'll have Helen Kiokis from the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. She is kind of in charge of advancing their statewide legislative priorities and serves as the lead organizer for the Fair Districts New Jersey initiative. Previously, Helen was a labor union organizer in the healthcare sector. And we have Mark Parker from the New Jersey Working Families Alliance, and he'll be speaking about the power of the progressive vote. Mark Parker McGuire was the deputy field director for the Bernie Sanders campaign and the data director for John's campaign. Now he's at Working Families. Would our 3 panelists please come forward?
I'm Mark. Hi, Mark. Nice to meet you. Hi, pleasure to meet you. Hi, everyone. How you doing? Good. All right. So, 10 minutes of it. You need. Okay. So we want to go to the front, the top of this is the end. There we go. All right. So the 10 minutes of this, try to get into it. So the victory was we won the ballot question in Camden for November 6th election. But we got to unpack what actually happened. I want to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, the full truth inside the space. So work with me. I talk very fast, but I'm going to get through this because these slides are important. So let me know if you don't understand any clarity. I'm here for that. All right. So what really happened on November 6th, 2018? I'm going to go back. May 2015, there was a petition drive that happened in Camden. Community members mobilized to get 50% of the votes from general elections to sign a petition to move Camden City School District from a Type 1 to a Type 2 school board. Remember, we were not able to vote at all since about 2007. So we had to do a petition drive to get people to understand why we needed our vote back. It was us versus them. So we ended up, we were in court battles for about 3 years with what we believe judges and lawyers that were connected to the Camden political balls that Julia kind of pointed out earlier. We know that we went to court about 3 or 4 times in tears trying to get this court case heard in front of judges who were not looking at us as if we were opponents of them, but also being fair in practice, right? Okay. Here we are in April, and I'll go back. That was this happened in April of 2015, right? Here we are in April of 2018, 3 years of a fight. April 2018 with the appellate court. Here are 2 lawyers who fought for us in appellate court with 3 judges, and here are some of our Camden fighters at the bottom of this picture here, where we went to appellate court and were able to hear these judges say, why is Camden not allowed to vote for their school board? It makes no sense. Let's figure out how we can make it happen. We still were unhopeful, but we walked away and said, maybe there's hope. So, appellate court judges ruled in our favor by April 28th of that month. We got ruling back saying that the court said that we will now allow the ballot question to be put on the ballot for Camden residents to be able to vote for either a Type 1 or Type 2 school board. Victory. That was the first step of victory. For your information, it took 6 months to get the language for the ballot question to us. From April 2018 to September 2018, we did not know what the question was going to be in the ballot. So we have an election coming up November the 6th. We didn't get the question for the ballot until September 2018. They held the question for a very long time, so we could not create the ground campaign, but there's hope. We all talked about Holtec, right? There was a groundswell that happened around the Holtec situation where Holtec called out Camden residents and said that we were not worthy, we were not this, we were not that, we were the they. We said, okay, here's the they. We said we're going to now have town halls because we wanted to control the narrative. We controlled the narrative. We wanted to organize and strategize around the question on the ballot, systemic racism, education equity, community benefits agreements, and also the local control question. And eminent domain was inside of that also. So the Holtec situation was a good thing for us because it exposed the operation that was happening in Camden with the racism, and also with the people who were playing with each other when it came down to the voting process in Camden. So we held a town hall. Our first one was in September, and we have held one every month up until just 2 days ago. Mobilization. So we teamed up with NJEA, CEA, and we're able to get some funding to be able to get people on the ground, not paying them, just paying for the actual documentation or flyers and stuff we put out in the streets. Because in Camden, it's sight and sound. So whatever you see, you believe. Whatever you don't see, you don't believe. So we got out there, and our campaign was Camden Votes No. That was our campaign, funded by NJEA and CEA. I want to shout out Dr. Keith Benson, who's not here, who we do a good tag team on this. He was the one who was out in the streets making a possibility for this to happen. It was so many other organizers and activists that were in Camden that were doing the work also. It will be a long list of people, but I think if you kept up with what happened, we were all speaking about it live on Facebook. Mobilization. Keith Benson, all of us went inside the schools, had people now standing behind the flyers. Now became ownership. Not just you seeing it on the streets, but now people were saying, I vote no. I'm going against this. I'm voting no. Remember, the question of no became, yes was, yes, I will continue on with appointing a school board. No means no, I no longer want a school board. So we had to play linguistic games with the people in the community. Because yes means I want it, right? No means I don't want it. We had to say, no, you want it. It was crazy. It was bananas. It was bananas. It was bananas. A lot of going through that. So here it is. This is where it got really technical. The mayor drew a line in the sand. It wasn't just him, with some political people also, but I won't unpack that right now, but here's with the Millers. Now remember, this is an election. There's people running in all those columns that Sue just talked about. There's people running for election. People running column 1, column 2, column 4, column 5. But the main thing in Camden became this question on the ballot. It was the money. It was the piggy bank. The mayor said, vote yes. So instead of giving the people back their democracy and saying, I'm going to stand away from this, the mayor said, I'm going to say how I feel and tell everybody to vote yes. He started saying graduation rates are up. It's better for us. We're doing much better. These are mailers they're spending money on. $1,000 are put in the mail every day about why you should vote yes. Camden City Council sent a letter out where every member of city council and people who have been past council people and signed a letter telling everybody to vote yes. This is the abuse of power that happens in Camden. This went out to every resident in Camden telling people to vote yes. They wasn't just in English, they did it in Spanish too, to make sure they got everyone involved in what happened, right? So this is where we were standing with. We were against the mayor, we were against the city council people. It was just us on the ground. This is a good old grassroots campaign. An eye for an eye. So here we are with the CEA and NJEA, and every time that they sound a mailer, we sound a mailer. We put a mailer in, they put a mailer out, we put a mailer out. They put a mailer out, we put a mailer out. We played the game. You want to play, you want to play. And we had the money. Thank God for the union saying that this is not right. This is democracy. So we say this: no person is your friend who demands your silence or denies your right to grow. That's Alice Walker, and that's how we felt, and that was our drive. Ballot for the election. Here's the real ballot. There's all those columns that Sue was talking about. It's there. And you have all these people running. But no one was concerned about that. Everybody was concerned about that one question, voting yes or voting no. You see, we highlighted no, right? We hit the streets hard. We choose local control rally and canvassing party. That was November the 3rd. We got everybody to get out on the streets and start canvassing, putting things out, knocking on doors, phone banking, doing whatever we can do to make sure that people understood this was a real battle, that we had to get out there on the streets. Get out the vote. Here's our cheat sheet card. We gave everybody at the polling sites. They were measuring where we were standing. They brought out every person in New Jersey. Get back from the door. You're too close to the door. They treated us like we were thieves over a ballot question. They were treating us like we were criminals over a ballot question. We gave everybody that walked in that door. We had exit polls, and everybody that came into the voting booths and voting sites this card and made it very clear. Here's the question, and here's how you vote. Vote no. We were told that this was the highest turnout of people who wanted to vote in Camden since President Obama, 2012 and 2008. Yup. At 8 o'clock that night, when polls closed by 8:18, this is the results we received. The yes question had received 721 votes at that time, and no had received 1,000, and that was just 49, about half percentage of the votes. By that night, the yes question received 2,000 votes, and the no question received 4,000 votes, and we won. We won. It was a win. It was the first win we had in Camden City, and we beat the machine down. They did not know what to do. They did not expect us, the little people of Camden, to come together. We were not paid. All of us stood out there in a cold rain on November the 6th, getting wet and soggy and sick, and we said we're going to fight it to the end, because we'll be darned if we're going to let our ancestors who fought for our right to vote take away our right today in Camden City, right? So what happened was, thank you, what happened was, We fought hard and we fought long. We didn't know. And I'm going to be honest. Oh, yeah, little faith. I'd seen so many things that hurt in Camden. I didn't believe it was going to happen because there's so much political fraud and voting fraud in Camden. We didn't know what was going to happen. No machines are corrupted. We knew it. But when that result came in, the people came out. The people spoke. They were on Facebook taking pictures saying, I voted no. It was a no campaign that went through Camden that changed the city, right? And it was real. So celebrating a small yet large victory. This was the highest turnout, and the people won. And this was articles that started coming out in the paper. We won, and then why do we need a school board election? We're holding town halls now and telling people step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of why we need the school board elections. And we're also going through what can you do to support. So in our Q&A, I can go over that part with you, but I just want to let you know that in this process, and I'm being very honest, it was a lot of people who were very supportive to seeing Camden win, but no one thought us as the underdogs, the people, the residents, could pull it off. And I want to let you know in this space right here, victories happen because people have to be invested in it. Every mother, every child, every teenager that was able to vote, every grandparent, every person that drove a person to the poll was invested in his vote. They said, how dare you, mayor, how dare you, people who are in political power, use your power to tell us not to vote for what we believe in. And that's how the people felt, that they were invested in their own interests in Camden City. That's how we win. So yes, we may have 77,000, we may teeter-totter between 77,000, 75,000 residents of Camden. Yes, that was a low turnout, but the people still came out. We had the worst things against us. We had no money. We had a large political machine that was against us. We had people who were in power who was pushing against us. And it was the rainiest, coldest day in November. And we still were able to build the people up enough to come out until 8 o'clock at night. There were lines around the polling sites still voting because people believed in that. So that's how we won our victory for the no vote in Camden.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me? Is this on? So I don't have slides. I have my little index cards here to guide me, so it might be a little awkward standing in front here. But my name is Helen Keokis. I work with the League of Women Voters of New Jersey. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this program. And even though this section is organizing wins, our Fair Districts New Jersey campaign to get a meaningful reform question on the ballot to change the way we draw our voting districts, we haven't gotten there yet. So a major roadblock came up in front of our campaign, which was this bad partisan gerrymandering bill. So we knocked that roadblock down in coalition with many groups who are in this room today, but we're still waiting for that organizing victory. So maybe in a year we'll have another program down here where we talk about exactly how we achieved that win. So again, the Fair Districts New Jersey campaign, it's an initiative of the League of Women Voters to change the way our voting districts are redrawn, which is this process that happens only once every 10 years because we have to account for population change, we have to account for demographic shifts, we have to abide by the Constitution and make sure everyone's equally and fairly represented, and that every community's vote carries the same weight. So once every 10 years, we have to change our district lines to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate in the political process. So what happened in mid-November, between mid-November and mid-December, was that the leaders in the legislature started fast-tracking a proposal to change our Constitution that would have given the green light to redistricting commissioners to basically use partisan data and a decade's worth of past election results to guide how the new voting districts are drawn, which is why we were calling it the partisan gerrymandering bill. So it would look at voting patterns and election outcomes, and then redraw. We have 40 legislative districts in New Jersey. So those district lines would have redrawn to basically give 15 safe seats to Republicans and 25 safe seats to Democrats. So that's how the way their calculation was written, it would have resulted in this outcome. Fair Districts and our partners, we're advocating for a process that's community driven, that uses public input, that uses the census data to draw a new map that accurately reflects the will of the people, and that will give us districts that where we can elect candidates of our choice, hold our elected officials accountable, vote people out if they're not performing the way we want them to perform. So we believe that redistricting should be a community-driven process, not one that it has political goals, not one that's outcomes-driven. So that was the proposal that was being fast-tracked, and we knew it was there because it was posted on the legislature site. You could search for, you can do a key term search and bring up bills related to redistricting. So we knew it was there. So as we were meeting with people, as we were meeting with legislators to talk about the Fair Districts campaign, to talk to them about what California did, which was implement an independent citizen-led commission, we kept hearing, not just from legislators, but also in trying to set up meetings from staff, well, leadership's got another proposal. Leadership's got another proposal. Okay, so we were like, this is, they're going to plan to do this very quickly. And I want to take a step back and just mention that this same proposal was introduced in 2015 around Christmas time. Nearly 100% word for word, the same exact proposal. And we had a Republican governor, Governor Chris Christie was our governor then, which is one of the reasons why the league, we were saying this is a power grab from the voters and from the people in a way for certain elected officials to secure their reelection rather than intra-party fighting, because they had tried to do the same exact thing in 2015. It didn't get a lot of attention. It definitely didn't get media attention. A few organizations came out in opposition. At the public hearings, I think there were like between 5 and 8 people who spoke in opposition. Was anyone following what happened in Trenton in December at the public hearing? Had about 100 people there. So what changed from 2015? The same proposal then, same proposal 2018. So what was different? What was different was we as an organization were better prepared. Through the Fair Districts campaign, we had developed relationships with national redistricting experts, and we were able, when we knew that this bill would move, we didn't know when, we were able to start dissecting this proposal with them, really pulling out the pieces that were most problematic. We sent the language to the Princeton Gerrymandering Project, who did the math, who ran the numbers, who used their calculations to show exactly how this map, how the calculations could be manipulated, how our districts could be gerrymandered using their calculations. We reached out to our partners. I think it was Labor Day weekend when I had a call with the Women of the Good Government Coalition to tell them we don't know when it's moving, but it will. Reached out to our league members. We have 36 local chapters across the state to let people know. Again, we're not sure if it will move, but if it does, we're going to have to move very, very quickly. Also, so we were better prepared as an organization. Also, nationally in the news, Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled their state map unconstitutional. That was 2017. 2 cases were on their way to the Supreme Court. That was also recently. So nationally, more people were hearing about gerrymandering than in 2015. How many groups in the room, how many people are part of a group, a local civic grassroots group now that was not around in 2015? So another major difference was just the number of groups who became civically active and who we knew that they would care about this. Because being a good citizen is no longer just going to the ballot, to the polling location every November, right? It's doing a lot more. And the last thing was the timing, what was different from 2015 to 2018. They tried to fast track this around the holidays thinking no one was paying attention, but all of these groups, all of these new groups, we're still on their high, right, from the first federal election since the 26th presidential election. So I think that leadership totally underestimated that momentum, that energy that existed. So we were able to take the preparations, the relationships we had built with groups. The league is we're celebrating our 100th birthday next year. So it's relationships we've built over many, many years, working with all these new groups. And it was pulled from a vote 2 days before it was scheduled. So that's about it. Thanks.
Hello, I'm Mark. So, my name is Mark Parker Magyar. Is this on? Can we hear me? Solid. I work with New Jersey Working Families Alliance. I'm a terrible public speaker, so I'm unbelievably nervous, so bear with me. Did I just log out of it? There we go. How'd we go? Which button do I click? There we go. So New Jersey Working Families Alliance, just a little background. We're a grassroots legislative advocacy and electoral organizing nonprofit. We focus on structural reform in pursuit of intersectional justice, and we're a chapter of the National Working Families Party. I don't think, we'll focus just on optimism. So, during Sue's speech, it was like, wow, we have the most corrupt system in America, which we honestly do. Like, this is this calcified, terrible, unbelievably misogynistic, racist structure that constantly passes bad policies for New Jerseyans and seems to mostly exist to make people rich. But we've actually had a good couple years. We have made some progress, both on the state and national level, that things are changing, that there is a progressive wave coming, and that despite how many different little tendrils, boss politicians in New Jersey like George Norcross have, all throughout our structure and our system, we are making progress. So New Jersey Working Families has been part of coalitions that have fought successfully in the last 3 years for $15 minimum wage, statewide paid sick leave, automatic voter registration, Governor Murphy's election. I worked for John Wisniewski. Governor Murphy is the most progressive governor we've probably had in New Jersey ever. I see you, Barry. I'm sorry, Barry. Feel the burn. And Governor Murphy's 2019 budget. Like we had under Chris Christie, 8 years of austerity budgets and austerity economics. Before that, we had Corzine. I mean, we've had 40 years of neoliberal austerity economics that basically channel wealth upwards. We finally started to raise some taxes in the past 2019 budget. We're going to focus on the budget fight upcoming. I hope to see you all there. We have another millionaire's tax, a state tax. We got a lot of things. In terms of how this legislation and how we accomplish these victories in the last 3 years, nothing working families accomplishes we accomplish by ourselves. And I see so many people in here who've been part of the different coalitions and the different fights that we've had. We met during the redistricting gerrymandering fight. Everything we accomplish is not because there's some monolithic progressive organization that accomplishes something in the shadows. It's because we all have to come together and work together. And the truth is, there are actually a lot of us. And when all of these different grassroots organizations like South Jersey Women for Progressive Change, and where's Catherine Hunt? Catherine Hunt is literally everywhere. Yeah, hi, Catherine. Catherine Hunt is at every event. She's amazing. When we come together, they have to listen. So just to do a quick rundown on the $15 minimum wage, usually how these fights go is that Governor Murphy tends to take a more progressive position, and our state legislative leaders, including Steve Sweeney, who my dad works for, I know, we've got some ethical conversations we have at home. It's a phase. He's going to grow out of it. Usually how this happens is that Steve Sweeney takes a conservative position, despite maybe having, endorsed the legislation 2 years ago. The assembly tends to sort of follow along. And then they end up introducing a bill that's basically the worst possible version of a $15 minimum wage. The original legislation they proposed was an $11 minimum wage by 2029. $11 when accounting for inflation. I'm sort of lying a bit, but still, the point is that they tried to pass a nominal $15 minimum wage, and then, we stopped them. Because the truth is that there were so many different grassroots groups, and we had Governor Murphy behind us, that we were able to stop them carving out 60% of New Jerseyans from getting a $15 minimum wage. Which is insane. What Democratic legislators and majority, like Democratic Assembly and the Democratic majority, the Assembly and Senate, would say that they're trying to pass a $15 minimum wage and then promise to basically create a bill where they carve out 65% of people. this is who we're fighting. This is, you know, some of this can be hyperbolic. I hear people say, like, I don't want to be criticizing other Democrats. The truth is that there's meaningful differences between Democrats. And I don't think that our Democratic state legislature right now represents very many people. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. So, reasons for optimism. I started to talk about these, but the simple truth is our agenda is popular. You look at national statistics and national polling when it comes to ending corruption, getting money out of politics, raising the wages for a middle class that hasn't seen a pay raise in 40 years, taxing the rich. I'm hoping for Eisenhower levels at 92%. That might be controversial. But we find that the majority of Americans support a top tax rate of 70%. Almost every one of these progressive agenda items is popular. Secondly, Democratic Party transformation. You can see this now. Hillary Clinton was also the most progressive candidate to basically get the Democratic nomination for president. Her policy and her platform, line by line, was progressive, and it was promising the type of intersectional economic and structural reform that we need to see as a country that's going to be the first multiracial democracy in the history of the world. The transformation's happening. When you see what Kamala Harris has introduced, when you see what Cory Booker has introduced in terms of the baby bonds and universal basic wealth, the ideas and the policies at the national level are changing, and the state Democratic bosses that are controlling our system are falling behind. Demographic change. In New Jersey, this is a big deal. 60% of Democratic primary voters in the last 3 years are women. Sue had the nice graph of all of the county chairs, I think, 5 county chairs. And what do a lot of Steve Sweeney's staffers look like? What do a lot of basically our elected officials look like? They're all men, and they're all white men. And they're increasingly non-representative of both the state and the Democratic Party. We're going to be one of the first states to go majority-minority. I think we actually might be the first when it happens. At a certain point, I believe that the voter base is changing, that will no longer have these just like cadre of white men that make decisions that aren't representative of who the actual Democrats are. Finally, you and thousands of people like you. I love coming to these events because I always get to see like 7 or 8 or 10 close friends. Sorry, I should stop. But there's so many different organizations and activists and grassroots leaders that are all out here together. We have a lot of power. We just need to mobilize it. So on that note, I'm just going to do one more slide. We have 3 campaigns going on. There's the Restore Government/Democracy Coalition. We are starting to talk about that. Sue Altman and South Jersey Women for Progressive Change are taking an active role in that. If you want to sign up for more details, there's also 2019 Democratic primaries. I know we said that the ballot gets you about 45% of the vote, but as you were saying in Camden, the ballot line works best when it's a low information election. If voters are informed and know what they're voting on, the ballot line doesn't matter as much, which is how Phil Murphy, despite spending $22 million and being a progressive good candidate, he didn't win 50% of the vote. That is crazy. That means that at least 70% of people, because you have to include all the people who wanted to vote for Murphy because they wanted to, like the vast majority of people came out to vote for a candidate and were informed in the gubernatorial primary. Like the assembly races that are happening right now are super low turnout. And so there's a huge opportunity to knock on doors at a fraction of the level of 2018 and inform all the voters of what's going on. There's also a list of progressive legislation we're working on. You can make a lot of change in the state legislature. You can make a lot of change in state government because not that many people matter. Not that many people pay attention, and legislators are afraid of their constituents. Thank you. It's amazing how nervous I get every time.
You need to start practicing. We got to get you timed out right. Okay, so please, one more quick round for our second panel. So now we're going to do a real quick lightning round. And up first, we have Meredith from South Jersey Women for Progressive Change.
Hi. So South Jersey Women for Progressive Change is a all-women, trans-inclusive, and non-binary inclusive organization that was founded following the 2016 election of Donald Trump by a group of women, mostly from Collingswood, I believe, who started a Facebook group because they couldn't believe this has happened. So we just started as a bunch of people who were upset on Facebook. And since then, we've grown to encompass all of South Jersey. We have a lot of people in Camden County, a lot in Burlington. We did a lot of work on Andy Kim's campaign. helped him get elected to Congress. That was exciting. We've done, we were proud to work with Ransha on the Camden Votes No campaign. So we have really grown from this Facebook group into a powerful group of in-person people who get together to get stuff done. So if you're interested in learning more about us and about what we do, come see me. I'll be at one of these tables afterwards.
Behind-the-scenes person, come see us because we have very specific needs right now for a lot of cool stuff we're working on. So thank you.
And I'll be one to say, don't discount those Facebook groups, all right? You'd be surprised at what you can do with a Facebook group. Julia from Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, brief word about what you do?
Oh, next step. So we're working on a lot of what you heard about today. So the line that actually came out of, I think, our efforts to highlight that issue. We have a listserv, which is minimal, like we do not flood your mailbox. We have a Facebook page. We have a website. We have a secret Facebook group for Progressive County Committee. So if you're interested, come talk to me afterwards. I think they've heard from me enough, yeah.
And Susan is going to tell us about what's coming up for Cherry Hill Progressives.
And Judy. Okay. So we're a group in Cherry Hill. We ran in 2017, and we're figuring to run again for this primary. We're also trying to help people throughout the county run progressive lines. So that's what I have to say. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. Judy Amorosa. I'm with the Cherry Hill Progressive Democrats. I don't think I need. Oh, okay. And also South Jersey Progressive Democrats. I live here in Cherry Hill. In 2017, Cherry Hill Progressive Democrats ran in the Democratic primary, and 47 people ran, and Susan Druckenbrod was one of them, Caroline Wong in the back, and some other folks. We did that in Cherry Hill, and I think there was some discussion about the column on the ballot. We were able to get a column on the ballot. We had 47 people. We had council above them, we had freeholders above them, and we had a state assembly candidate above them. And we did succeed in getting about 37% of the vote as a starter effort. Now, here's a unique feature about the Democratic County Committee in Camden County. You always hear, oh, just go get some signatures and run in your district. You can be a committee person for the Democratic Party. Well, that's not the case here in Camden County. We are different because in Camden County, you run at large, your entire town. So what does this mean? We have to organize. We have to organize. You cannot do it by yourself unless you live in Tavistock, right? If you live in Cherry Hill, you're running with 60 people, okay? If you live in Camden City, you're running with 50-something people. We have to get together, organize in each town. We also have to organize across the county. Right? Because we're going to end up running together with freeholder candidates above us. Now, I see I have 1 minute left. So I want to take that minute. Okay. I have a card here. I have a sign-in sheet over there. If you are in this room and you live in Camden County, you should consider doing this. This is not public office. This is a party position. Anyone can do it. I just read the obituary for my 100-year-old aunt in Somerset County, and in there it said she was a 40-year Democratic county committee woman in Bound Brook, New Jersey. I didn't even know that about her. So anyone can do this. This is the people in this room. You're here. You're active. Do it. Stop. Okay.
Nice. Do I have Tom here to tell us about the Medicare for All campaign?
Thank you. New Jersey Universal Healthcare Coalition. These are exciting times for Medicare for All. We just had a bunch of barnstorms around the state with the push from National Nurses United, the largest nurses union in the country, 150,000 strong. And those barnstorms are geared to do exactly what John Wisniewski was talking about, do canvassing, door-to-door and crowd canvassing. We now have, dozens of those happening around the state over the next couple of months. We want to thank the group that's sponsoring here today, the South Jersey Women for Progressive Change. They held one of those barnstorming events, and Janice Ortega deserved special thanks from the group for pulling that together. Last week, Representative Jayapal's bill, which is the new standard for Medicare for All, replaces H.R. 676. H.R. 1384 was introduced. It's better in many ways. It's very strong on reproductive rights, ensuring full range of services, including termination of pregnancy, exempt from the Hyde Act. Only 2 members of the House are on the list of 106 co-sponsors that bill had when it was introduced. Most important thing you can do is communicate with your congressperson, have all the information there, tell them to get on board with H.R. 1384. Norcross was the co-sponsor of H.R. 676. He's not on 1384. We thought it was a bit of a joke that he was on 676, but anyhow, we got to get him on board. Van Drew is a health professional. This new bill makes dental part of the coverage that everybody should have from cradle to grave, so he should care about that. And Kim seems supportive, but he's drunk some of Pallone's Kool-Aid, which is a problem because Pallone is chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, old school Democrat, not supporting Medicare for all. So Kim needs an urge. So that's what's going on. Lots of information over there. Thanks for all the good work you do. Thank you.
And Chris from Cooper River Indivisible.
Hi, guys. My name is Chris Emmerich. I'm from Cooper River Indivisible. Our table's over there. Just by show of hands, I'm curious how many people have heard of Indivisible, not just Cooper River, but maybe the national organization. Okay, so a lot of very familiar with it. Just to give you a brief overview, it is an organization, I'm sensing a theme here, that started on that dark day that shall not be named in 2016. It wasn't even an organization. Frankly, it was a document that was created by 2 former congressional staffers that was really just a roadmap for how to resist. It's one of a couple groups like Flippable or Swing Left that got out the blue wave and flipped the House. Cooper River Indivisible it's based in Collingswood. It has members all over Camden County, and our main focus is 3 things. We schedule or we organize marches and protests when things are big enough or bad enough that we really want to make our voice heard. We had a march to protest the child separation policy over the summer. We had an event to protest the National Emergency Declaration. The next thing that I want to talk about, we have monthly meetings, and we're trying to get sort of a guest speaker series going. Last meeting that we had in February, we had a representative from the American Promise, which is an organization that is it's fighting money in politics, and its ultimate goal is to get a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. Coming up on April 4th, okay. On April 4th, we have a meeting with a special guest, Brandon McCoy from New Jersey Policy Perspective, who was just named the president of that organization. So we're very excited about that. He's going to be talking about the subsidy program in Camden and those wasted tax dollars. Finally, I want to talk about what we're here for is to try and recruit members to our call teams. We have 2 call teams. The first one is a congressional team. So for all those people who are arguing on Facebook and want to channel that into something positive, if you want to call up Donald Norcross or Senators Booker and Menendez and yell at them to support something or not support something, we have a call team for that. And about a month ago, we started a state call team so that we can call our state reps. So we'll be over there. We're collecting signatures. Thanks a lot.
Indivisible really is a good group across the country. I do work with them. They just supported us on the ground when we did Teachers Against Child Detention down in El Paso, Texas. Mark, what's next for working families?
So we started talking about it, but we're working on a campaign for progressives to run for office. We're trying to build a coalition with different partner organizations. You should run. All we need is one person in the state legislature that could serve as a lightning rod for progressive ideas like AOC is doing in Congress. I know that it seems like a long shot when we talked about the ballot line. We can win one because they're also terrible organizers. Like, their targeting is bad, they're lazy, they throw a lot of money, but they mostly just give it to their consultant friends. We're also working on a couple legislative campaigns, an anti-wage theft bill, driver's licenses for undocumented New Jerseyans. There's a huge way of getting involved in the state legislature. If you want to see me at the table to talk about it, I would love to talk with you.
Helen, I think next steps for this was really important, so one more time.
Yes, I didn't even say anything about the slide that was up behind me while I was speaking, but we just wrapped up having 10 public forums across the state to collect feedback on reforms, ideas for reforms. And the video, we made, Princeton Gerrymandering Project and I made a video. It's 38 minutes long. You can watch it, learn about redistricting, hear about what other states have done, and then take a survey at the end, submit your feedback on some of these principles and best practices. And that's the Vimeo link is up there. And you can go to fairdistrictsnj.org to sign up to get emails about our campaign. Thank you.
That's Rancha's whole stack because this is everything that she's involved with. So what's next for, let's see, Camden Parents Union, Camden Education Association, and We Choose Journey for Justice?
Thank you. So I'll be quick. There's a few things happening. So post the election that happened November 6th, first I want to recognize two of my resource and core members in the audience, Pastor Amir Khan and Keith Benson Sr., who's Keith Benson Jr.'s father, back there in the back. Hey, guys. Full local control. We're fighting for full local control in Camden. We have 3 seats up November 29th, right? So they still will be under an appointed school board, but they will be voted by the people. So we need support with helping us to organize around running candidates that are very well versed in 3 things: curriculum, policy, and budget. This cannot be a popularity contest. It has to be people who are rooted in this information, so that way we can get great candidates to be able to sustain the school board, because our goal is to give full local control back, to get from under state control with this whole CUSAC situation. That's a whole nother conversation I can't have right now. The second piece is with CEA. I'm not a teacher, but as a parent, we are working hard and tirelessly to abolish the Camden enrollment. It is the biggest hoax since I don't know when, but Lord have mercy, Camden enrollment is a vacuum to suck our Camden public school students out of public schools and put them in the Renaissance schools, and that is not fair, right? And we don't, fair is such a kiddie word, but it's the truth, it's not fair. So instead of us doing that, we want us to abolish the Camden enrollment, stop this algorithm that's happening to take our children out of our public schools, and hold the Renaissance schools accountable. That audit unpacked a lot of things that we have not addressed, and we want to make sure we have a conversation about that. We want you also to help education equity and justice become a frontline issue for every candidate running in New Jersey. We want every candidate in New Jersey to make education equity a frontline issue, right? And then support us on the Counselors Not Cop campaign we're running. Right now we know there's a bill on the governor's desk that's asking for more police. We'll ask for police in all New Jersey schools. We need some support with that, right? We need some support to veto that bill, because that looks different from our more affluent communities to our African American and black and brown communities. So we want to unpack that. And finally, with this, what I just talked about, we want you to mark your calendar, become our allies at the next board meeting in Camden, March 26, 2019. I'll share information with the women here to come to that meeting. We need more voices to say, it's not happening in my community like this. Why is it happening in Camden? Number 2, sign up, become an ally of Camden Parent Union and a coalition member of Camden We Choose. We're building power. No more silos. We're working all together. Another thing, attend our next town hall on March 28th, 7 p.m. at the Camden County Historical Society, 1900 Park Boulevard. We'll be unpacking this report right here, Felling Brown v. Board, talking about the inequities of 12 public schools in urban communities compared to 12 affluent schools. And then the last thing, just bring a friend and go beyond the moment, join the movement. Don't live in this moment, just join the movement, because it's going to be another thing that happen. It's a playbook. It's called privatization, and we have to stomp it every day. Thank you.
I just want to speak about that legislation a little bit of a clarification. We do have police in our schools, and that was put in 2016, and that's bad enough. What they want to do now is open it up to corrections officers. Corrections officers have a different mindset, and not necessarily one that you want to have around any children in schools. So it's important as that campaign moves forward. And we were also supposed to have a representative of Green Party New Jersey here. Cam, you want to come on up?
Hi, so my name's Kim. I'm from the Green Party, and we're also a political group, but we're also activists who do things with environmental, for immigration, whether it's health care or anything. But right now what we're working on is ranked choice voting, which we want to start getting more people to learn more about that, because we feel ranked choice voting will help get more, not just independent, but more progressive people elected. If you don't know anything about ranked choice voting, you sort of rank your choice between 1, 2, and 3, and 4. We are going to be holding some forums to teach a little bit more about this. So if anybody's more interested, I do have some information about it. And we do have a Facebook called New Jersey Ranked Choice Voting for New Jersey, if anybody wants to look into that. We're starting to do. All right, thank you.
A couple thanks to all of our co-sponsors, participants, South Jersey Women for Progressive Change, Good Government Coalition of New Jersey, Working Families Alliance of New Jersey, Cooper River Indivisible, Camden Parents Union, Cherry Hill Progressive Democrats, and Concerned Citizens of North Camden. Definitely a very special thank you to our South Jersey Women for Progressive Change Steering Committee members, Helen Duda and Carolyn Wong, for coordinating the refreshments. And, of course, thanks as always to our gracious host, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Cherry Hill. And one more round for all of our participants.